Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today, my guest is Eddy Smits. He's a TEDx speaker. He's a coach focusing on mental fitness and peak performance. And his TED Talk is about leadership, but from a very interesting perspective. From how can we learn leadership from a clown? Because Eddy has a great experience of working as a clown in a hospital, and he shared this in his TED Talk, and that's why I invited him to Ideas and Leaders today, so that we have this conversation. Hi, Eddy. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Elena. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Eddy, can you tell us in the beginning something about yourself, especially about your story? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so actually, I started my professional career started as a teacher because I wanted to do something for children. But soon I found that wasn't my thing. I couldn't be creative. It was really structured. I didn't feel good in that. And then at some point, I got fascinated about clowning, about being a clown. And that was what I wanted to do. So yeah, that was pre-internet, right? So I hired movies, I read books, I really immersed myself in this clown thing. And everybody thought I was crazy, literally, because like that was end 80s, beginning of the 90s. And no one believed that was actually a job that you can make money with, that you could make a living of. But I persisted, and I as I went along and as I learned, at some point I did make my job of it, and I did make my money with it. And I remember the first time that my parents took me seriously was the day that I told them that I was going to build a house. And I think that was like 10 years in my career. But then they said, "Oh, all right, how can you build a house? Do you make money then? What you are doing?" So yeah, so that's a little bit in short the story. And during the hospital clowning, which I did for 10 years, the other clowning was 25 years. I learned a lot, not only about myself, about people, also about leadership, about all these things. And fast forward now, at some point, I was tired of the clowning. I was tired of the being an artist. I even had a burnout. And I went into coaching, and I soon found out that all the techniques and the things that I did in hospitals, that I could use them exactly like I used them in hospitals in my coaching. Because in clowning, we did a one-on-one with sick children. It was being in the now, it was with them, it was reading them, it was so all the things that I do as a clown now, back then, I do now as a coach. And it goes even further than that, because a few years ago I got in touch with positive intelligence, and I always thought that, if you speak to people like clowning, they don't understand, which is normal. But now I've got a science-based thing that I use in my coaching, and it's science-based. So everybody says now it's the point where with my parents, I told them I'm going to build a house. Now I'm that point that I have a science-based thing that does things exactly the same as I did as a clown. So yeah, I think I'm getting there, and people are starting to get me serious. Also, the TED Talk helps a lot. People listen and you say, "Yeah, I did a TED Talk." Oh, so they are interested then, because it is a big thing, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's briefly who I am and my journey. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so interesting that you're sharing your experience, 25 years as a clown, and you're speaking about how to be better leaders, how to be better in self-leadership, in
Yeah.
relationships with others. Because I think, in my opinion, being a clown or being an actor or working with people like this in hospitals, it requires courage, it requires a lot of skills, interpersonal skills, not only acting skills as maybe we think what is on the surface, but also we need to feel people, we need to understand people. So it is great that you're teaching this. So what are those skills that are required for a clown to be a clown that we can use in our lives?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and that's always what I start with, is not about you. I think a lot of leaders at some point they pulling in the attention, and they wanna have the spotlight on themselves. But I think as a leader, if you want to accomplish something, you have to put the spotlight on the people you're working with, and over or on your product or whatever you are doing. And that was exactly the same in a hospital. It's not about the clown who comes in and does his magic tricks or whatever he does. It's about what the child wants and how you get through to the child, because you're working with a sick child. It's totally different than a healthy child. Then the clown knows often is enough to make a child laugh. But in a hospital, there's much more going on. And as soon as you put the focus off yourself, then things are starting to change as a leader too. As soon as you're going to show interest in the people that you work with, or your employees, even as soon as you lay that focus on them, things start to change. But that's a click you need to make, and that was also a click as a clown I needed to make, because I was performing on stages and wherever, and then you're actually literally in the spotlight. But then at some point in a hospital, that didn't work anymore. So, and I think as a leader too, at some point you have to say, okay, now it's not about me anymore. Okay, I'm this guy and I have accomplished this and this and that, which is good, but that brings you only to a certain point. And if you want to grow from then it's not about you. Is for me, that's really important to make that click.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is very important to focus on others. So what do you usually recommend? What can we do to make this click, to start focusing on others and to start thinking less about ourselves?
Yeah, well, it's a little it seems counterproductive, but it's not. I think the better you know yourself, the easier it is to put focus on others. So it all starts with really with knowing yourself, with knowing what your weak points is not the word, your blind spots are, by discovering them, and sometimes you need help with that. That's why they call it blind spots, right? You don't see it yourself. So it's really a journey into yourself. Who am I? What I want? What are my values? What do I stand for? And then you can start to project these things. Same thing exactly with clowning. You need to be a very good clown first to do the job. And so you have to train yourself. You have to do all these things. And as soon as you're a good clown, then you go in and then you make the contact, and then everything goes in flow. But your skills as a clown is the foundation. So it's your self-knowledge, it's your skills. And that's the same with a leader. Your skills in knowing yourself it's identically. You need to know yourself. You need to know who you are, what you stand for, what triggers you. There's some things that can trigger you, and you need to counter them. I mean, maybe you are very impatient, and when you feel that coming up, you need to say, oh, wow, this is my trigger. So I need to catch that. Okay, I caught it, and now I can do something with it. And in hospitals, the same. Sometimes things trigger you, but you have to stay in this clown role. The clown isn't triggered by these things, and that's the skill. That's that's the clown. That's literally the clown costume that you wear, and when you go in, you're not yourself anymore. You're the clown.
Yeah, so I think that maybe it is, I can see this analogy with leadership also, that maybe we would react to some things personally, we would be offended, but when we are leaders and when we are actually working to achieve certain goals in the organization, then we need to act as the leaders. We need to wear this leader mask, right?
Yes, and that's the first step. because you're right, that you say, okay, now I'm a leader, I have to lead these people, so I can't be triggered. That's the first step. But the second step is actually that you aren't triggered anymore by these things, or that it's just like you are triggered, but it goes away so fast. And that's really, that's black belt leadership, right? That the triggers are there and you see them, but and again here as a clown, that's also the next step. In as a clown, you see all these things, but you stay in your role, and you become this clown. And the same with it, you become a leader. You you are a leader. It comes from inside. It's that thing that you have become, right? Um, that's also why I firmly believe that leadership is something you can learn and you should learn. I mean, of course, you have some people that have some skills that are born, and they have it a little bit easier to be a leader. But I strongly believe that leader skills is something you have to pick up and learn and develop. You're not sorry, but you're not born as a leader. Nobody is born as a leader. You can have some skills exactly as a clown. You can have, I always had a very expressive face, that was nice. I had that, but at some point that didn't help me anymore, because and the thing is, it prevented me a very long time to become this good clown, because uh, by this mimic that I had, I could make people laugh and it was easy. But when it became harder, I didn't have the skills to make them laugh, because I didn't develop these skills because of my mimic. So at that point, I lost time in that. And that's the same with leaders. If they are natural and they go into a certain flow, but at some point they need skills to develop themselves and to go further and to be stronger. So here again, it's exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We need to work on our skills all the time to go to the next level in anything we do,
in
right?
anything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not about you. You mentioned this tactic that we can use. So what else can we learn from being a clown?
Yeah. The next big thing is about failure. So the clown, which is very, very, very funny, haha, he gets his success by failure. So if you watch the old Charlie Chaplin movies or whatever, when Charlie Chaplin falls, or when he stumbles, or when he does something, when he fails, actually, right, we laugh. So now what a clown needs to do now is he has to go and look for failure.
Yeah.
Which is very funny, because that's something that's everybody goes away from failure. You don't want to fall, right, in life. You don't want to make failures. You want to do everything perfect. And in clowning, you have to look for these failures and go, and you have to like it. You have to, that you fail. And here again, in leadership, sorry, it's the same. The more you fail, the closer you are with your success. I remember my clowning career, the first years, it was nothing but failure. I didn't know anything. I had to learn everything. Then it's the same in leadership. You have to learn everything, and you fail all over, and you fail all over. And you just need to stick with it and learn from your mistakes and go on and go on and go on to grow stronger. So here again, it's really the same again. And the more you get comfortable being uncomfortable, you can call it like that, the faster you will learn, the faster you will grow. So this feeling of being uncomfortable that the clown loves, if you can love that as a leader, that's also something that will help you enormously. There is no failure. You can only learn from it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And do you think that you like you being a clown was your job, right? And do you think that in your real life, real Eddie, while being a clown and while using those principles, did it change your life also, and your attitude and your attitude to failure?
Yeah, it changed me completely. Especially when I started to do the hospital work, and especially in the last years when I started to visit palliative kids. When I was younger and something happened, you were in a car and you had bad traffic or you had bad luck or whatever, you got frustrated and angry and all these feelings that don't serve you. And when I came out of a hospital room with a child that had only, let's say, a few weeks to live, or sometimes even a few days, when you come off that visit, you don't care anymore if there's traffic. You don't care anymore if there's only $100 in your bank account. It's not important anymore, as it should be, because these things are not important. So you learn to see the important things in your life, and you learn to ignore the others. And that's something, that's a lesson I learned that to me was very valuable in the rest of my life, in the rest of my career also. Now also in that is starting with my coaching career, things didn't go well, and but I had this feeling of, it's just a coaching career, Eddie. I mean, yeah, what if you can't buy a new car? What if you have to sell your apartment, which I did? It's not important, all these things are really not important. um, and that's something, I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned for my personal life, was working with these palliative kids. um, I, I learned more from them than they from me, absolutely. um, so yeah, that was for me, was really valuable, because when I was young, I was somebody who was really quickly angry, and I was really quickly upset, and I was really a little bit red-headed, like they say, or hot-headed, and that diminished, and that so I became a more agreeable, a more likable person just by doing the work. And people told me that also. They told me literally, when some people that I didn't see for a long time, for years, they said, "Oh, you changed. You've become calmer. Yeah, the age does you well." They said, "You become calmer," but it wasn't my age. It was really the work that I was doing. That that yeah, that's changed me, in a good way, of course. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, this is really interesting that we become more empathetic, more
Yeah.
feel others more, especially when
Yeah.
we are working with people, you
Yeah.
work with children, and
And
it
that's
is a
the
great
word.
experience.
Yeah, and that's the word, empathetic. What you are calling now. It's one of the biggest assets you can have as a leader, is being empathic. I think maybe the greatest. And in the beginning, you say, no, as a leader, you have to be strong, and no, don't. These are just people you work with, blah blah blah. And yeah, that's also a kind of leadership. I agree, but it's not the kind of leadership that will make people follow you. Um, and if you can feel for people, if you can, again, if you can make this real connection, but a real connection, right? Not a fake one, not coming into the room and say, hey, how, yeah, and how are you, and all these things. If you can't do it from your heart, and mean, if you say hi to somebody, people feel that unconsciously, they feel it. um, and that's, I think that's a sort of facade that a lot of leaders have, and they would be surprised if they would show a real interest in people, what would happen with these people, in your leadership, and in people that want to follow you, and they want to do some things for you, and they want to accomplish things together with you, as of then. So here again, great analogy, and it's you see, the more I'm talking about this, and the more I'm really doing this work, the more I see it's really so alike. Yeah, there are no things that you have in doing as a clown that you can't do as a leader. It's exactly the same. Yeah, yeah, I always say to people, I just changed costume. As a clown, you had this crazy costume, and now I have a suit or whatever. That's the only thing I did. But for me as a person, doing the job as a clown or doing the job as a coach is exactly the same, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it is just about working with people, and I love what you said about being sincere, not being fake, and not just saying certain things because you have to say them. Yesterday, for example, I attended a workshop on a small talk and building relationships in a correct way, and we discussed certain techniques. Yes, how can you start to conversation with a person? How can you develop this conversation? But I think that the most important thing is that you always have to be sincere, that you cannot just use certain techniques, read a book about the leadership, for example, how to be a good leader, and then, okay, so first I will do this, then I will do this. You cannot do this if you are not sincere, if you're not empathetic, if you're not genuinely interested in those people that you're working with. So that's why I think that the thing that you said is so important.
I remember when I first started as clown, when you stumble, right, and to make people laugh, it didn't work. And that's a technique, it's a technique is you learn how to stumble. It's a sort of thing. It doesn't work until this clown comes into you, until you become this clown. And then when you stumble, then people laugh, which is if you think about it, which is ridiculous, because if you see it just sees the same, but still people feel it. And it's hard to explain that to people. But again, people feel when you are sincere to them and when you want to help them and when they just feel it. And on the other hand, too, I also say that to people, if somebody is not interested, if you feel that this person really doesn't interest me, don't go and talk with him, because there's no sense. There will never be a connection. You will do never business with this person. You can do whatever trick you want, and you will have a laugh, ha ha ha, and a small talk, like you're saying. But when there's no real connection, you will never have a good relationship, business-wise or whatever, with that person. It's impossible. It's really impossible. Or for a short time, maybe, but you will never have a decent relationship with that person. So that's what I say. Avoid it. If you feel in a conversation that this person is not interested, or you don't feel it, well, then I can learn you techniques to go out of the conversation, because some people say, maybe it's rude to so many things you can say at that point just to turn the conversation and to walk away. So then you use the techniques, right? Then it works.
yeah. Yeah, so we have discussed that it's not about you, that we need to become friends with failure, and we need to be okay with failure, and that we need to be more empathetic, more real, show our interest in other people. So is there anything else that you wanted to add to this list of things?
I think the third great one, they're all great ones, right? But it's never give up. I remember in my career as a clown, I was in for like 5-6 years, I think. So I thought, I'm quite good. I'm beginning to know these things. I was longer, I think. Doesn't matter. And so I followed the course. So there was 2 weeks in a row. So only professionals could enter this course. So you had to be a professional clown to go in. That was one of the things you need. And it was not that expensive, but that was the thing. So I learned. It was international, so people from all over came. There were only like me and another guy who were Belgian guys. All the rest were foreigners. And I remember driving home after the first day in tears. And I thought I was a fairly good clown. And I was so down. I had the feeling I couldn't do anything. And I remember coming home and telling my then ex-wife, I'm not going back tomorrow. I mean, this is no use. It's just no use. But I did go back, actually, and it took a few days to get myself over it. But afterwards, that was the best thing I ever did. There, I learned so much, I learned so much in this 2 weeks that most of the things, it took me years to do them because there was so much information you got there. So the third principle, if you want to call it like that, is really don't give up. Is stay on it, how hard it is. Just don't give up. If you gotta cry, cry. If you gotta do whatever it takes, but just don't give up. And I really think you can only lose by giving up. That's the only way you lose something. And as long as you keep going, sometimes you will go fast, other times you will go slow. There will be times that you go backwards too, but as long as you keep moving forward, that was also the thing I learned there in my being a clown. Even if you say to people, I wanted to give up clowning, they say, how can you do that? It's such a, it's fun, and but even in fun things, it's possible to give up. So you have to just endure and go for it. Keep pushing, how hard it is, and there a solution will come, and it's like Steve Jobs says, you cannot connect the dots going forwards. You have to connect them seeing backwards, and seeing backwards now, that was one thing I needed to again go to this next level and to make things afterwards that I wouldn't have done if I didn't follow that course.
Thank you.
By the way, there were people who didn't came back the next day.
Really?
Yeah. So I wasn't the only one with that feeling. I think like 2 people didn't come back the next day, and everybody thought they were sick, but they gave up.
So Eddy, thank you for this inspiring message, because I think that many people who are listening to us, they needed to hear this, because I'm sure that all of us, we are going through our own fights, and sometimes we feel that, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should give up, maybe this is not for me. But this is very important to keep going step by step. And I think that the story that you mentioned, it also shows that we learn a lot by going out of our comfort zones. And sometimes if it is an event with people that are more experienced than us, or if it is some place that we think that, oh, maybe I shouldn't be here, maybe I don't belong here, this is exactly the place that we need to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had this couple of times usually every time I had this feeling, I went to the next step of my career, of my development in life. So I think that it is a very important message that you shared. So we discussed that it's not about you. We discussed the failure aspect, never give up, and I really love the messages. So what are the last things that you want to share with our listeners who are listening to us? How can they enhance their leadership potential? What can they do better, differently? What can they learn from a clown?
Well, I think, and maybe I mentioned it already, you gotta love yourself first. And love in a good way, not love that you want to shine or you want to be this big hotshot. As a leader, you need to make people feel good. That's also what a clown does, by the way, right? But that making people feel good, you can only do that if you feel good yourself. You cannot there's this story about the clown who has this tears and is a sad figure, and that is in a way wrong, because this clown character, is a good character, is somebody who loves himself, is open to the world, is that kind of thing. And that's also, as a person, a leader, person, whatever, is required. And I always say, also in my coaching, I say, if your candle is burning, right, you can lit 10,000 other candles, no problem. But your candle, without your candle going out, you can light as many candles as you want. But if it's not burning, you can't light up other candles. It's as simple as that. And people call it self-care. You can call it whatever you want, but it is important to really take good care of yourself in every kind of way, your body, your health, your mind. And if you feel good about yourself, if you feel that you become a happy person, then you will share it automatically. And as a leader, of course, then if you can, how can I say this? If you can spread that, right, that feeling, and you will spread it if you have it. I think that strong leaders have this and do this. They genuinely feel happy. They genuinely feel passionate about what they are doing, and that radiates. That radiates. And again, you can lit as much candles if you want, if your own candle is burning.
Great. I love the analogy with candles. And yeah, it is so true. So thank you, Eddy, so much. If our listeners want to reach out to you, to contact you, to ask you about what you're doing, to ask you additional questions, where can they find you?
The easiest way is just my website, eddysmits.com. Of course, they can connect on LinkedIn. You'll find me. I think these are the easiest ways to get in touch with me. Yeah.
Sure. So I will definitely put all those links under our episode so that our listeners can immediately jump there and reach out and connect with you. Thank you so much, Eddy. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Pleasure was all mine, Elena. Thank you.